Hello, Connecticut's networks recorded in Weathersfield Police. They demonstrated it's true. They attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and as an adult, so they can't be trusted. That's why I'm trying to ask you on over the internet, because they also changed digital evidences. Whiting forensics also involved with people named O'Neill with predicate acts with them, and Weathersfield Police also forced Saudi Arabia with the people with O'Neill collusions before and after the World Trade Center attack. After it, to hide it too, with WFSB, fake conversations with me, fake ties to me as a kid and as an adult, pretending I had a mental diagnosis as a kid too. No, and they've been attaching other kids. They forced the principal child abuser at the same time. All kinds of organized crimes in their fake conversations with me, fake ties to me, fake nature ties to me with other people too. Their sources. That's CBS. Now WTNH, NBC has people named O'Neill that have their kids involved because they need to hide live progressions. I don't know if they're related to them, but she's a teacher reportedly in West Hartford, and she had her kids involved with sexual medical offenders of kids. One's named Lombardo and Leahy also faked conversations with me, and a Dillon family, and they're also involved with abuses of patients there, actual physical patients, but as people involved with the mental health care side too. It's leaky. It's been leaked over since the whole time. The delusions rot too. Putting fake transcripts in databases at Hartford Hospital with them, with this, and a whole bunch of people made confessions on my street from other areas. There are people with New York City with what is that part of it? Staten Island involved with the Fred Grisette, with some people from Ukraine and Russia, with the military, with the Fred Grisette, involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, people associated with the John Mayano and Modern Pastry. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with identity theft, fraud, slander against me, and then having the Modern Pastry repeat fake things. I never saw Modern Pastry people on a campus in my life. And then they demonstrated people with the stop and shops in Weathersfield and Hartford are increasingly collusions with people that have been planting evidences on all sides of my house. Now, these are also people that put people in fake conversations with others about religions on a mass scale and about saying people follow them. These are mental health experts that have their kids. In other words, two, you should see the things they did recorded. In other words, they totally just fake things to force people for mental evaluation when they are caught. And I was speaking about it on Facebook. And that was before they brought the little daughter of one of the Leahy, the men and women, different generations of the whole family, a Leahy family at Hartford Hospital, faking transcripts, ties to people. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the racketeering influence organization, time collusion slash S with them, and his federal criminal defendants in a 2006 case, district court case. The recording capacity confirmed also collusions with names next to the World Trade Center in New York the morning of the World Trade Center attack. The last morning he was there, and the night before it, with people named Scalora too, and all sides of criminal and civil cases interstates. And in the case that was next to the World Trade Center that day, that morning, right before the attack, it was proven afterwards there had been a sequence shift from inside the court affected. They used the identity of the court remotely. No, because also names on both sides of that case were used remotely also by people from Central Connecticut State University into Britain, Connecticut. That is increasingly collusion slash S intercities and intra-cities with people that since before I went there have been planting evidence on my street, and they've been doing it with judges and prosecutors, personally and professionally, with their family members, but and tied to these people and these retired police chiefs and their intimate ties and families, like a police chief Cintron. But he also has people from Puerto Rico with the name Cintron. These are all that are involved also with San Diego campuses, with people from all different countries, all kinds of medical corruption. In other words, and roles with, in other words, people sharing names. Also, Bobby, people with the name Bobby that are men and women involved on Covington Street, with people involved with murders and roles, confessions, and other natures of federal evidences crimes and prosecutors and judges with a federal crime. to say that. Or make it up. In other words, a Cologne family and their neighbors have with them, and their mother, where their mother works too. I don't know her name. A Cologne and a Gill family. They're involved intercities and interstates, and people with Middletown involved too with the state police and providing forensics. Increasingly with them with people intelligence families from Weathersfield have roles with people on Covington Street next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain through time, and the spots on all sides of it is increasingly collusions with people in intercities and intra-cities. As people increasingly next to Harvard Hospital have collusions planting evidences intercities next to campuses. Rick C.M. Paglione sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Kevin Harris is involved with abuses of the daughter of principals, and the kids of principals too, with a Brian Silver is one of the prosecutors involved with the Britain Superior Court with a whole bunch of people and Hartford courts, and I found out the district court also, and all sides of the case there, as ones on all sides of the case next to it in the court itself, used remotely. That proven led up to a 2006 district court case with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members. His co-defendant right before that case sought me out to repeat and demonstrate, and he has collusions next to Fox Connecticut News, with Fox News, and with other networks, and exceptions like public television. It has something to do with their roles with Alison Mulcahy, and repeated Jewish. I don't know if she's Jewish or what, but Mike Domain made Jewish themed things as one of the ones involved with the police forms next to and Alison Mulcahy, and also some Mendez police involved next to Hartford's Fox 61 News. Also a Mike Pandolf. Now these are people that I've been planting evidences all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Weathersfield, and all sides of criminal and civil cases, and all along Route 3 too, and conjunctions to it, and that. In other words, and with the news at the same time, so then no one can get the right outcome of everything. These courts have had collusions at the same time with difference of guilt. Increasingly, former mayors from Weathersfield have collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And that's recorded. They brought this up. They know that too. This preaching method used showing everyone they can't afford to have discerned their roles of predicate acts and facts. Increasingly, people tied to this former mayor Gold too, and relatives and neighbors of and associations with a Ruth tied to a mayor before him are increasingly involved with people that were involved with abuses of little boys and girls with the overt criminal enterprise, private ones involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, people with the religious spots too. These are roles with differences, rackets. See them speaking about. I was just watching a Katie Halper show. They have some guy speaking about what is it called? White supremacy. Oh my God! Yeah, Israeli general doesn't help them. Does not help us. White supremacy. Think about that. That's collusion /s with the people framing our founders for slavery and pretending they're for them, or with the counters to that, which is framing them too, because our founders had nothing to do with slavery. In fact, our founders knew that they were going to frame them as the framers. Our founders were unnamed founders, and they directed us to understand why and how we couldn't know that they didn't have security to let us know their names. So they directed us to refer to them only as James Madison. And they had to counter extort key people at key locations. And that's why they took part with the Declaration of Independence. They didn't have the right to take part with that. And they had no way to. The laws were going to kill them anyway once they did that. But they were going to get killed by those laws anyway. That's why they counter extorted. They were able to. The laws were so bad. But then the North, they had to leave even slavery entrenched. Laws against all women. Laws against all native difference. No one had free speech. That's what James Madison declassified. Even about how he didn't have free speech. Everyone was forced to censor everyone through themselves. You know, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, international companies. They had internationally monitored conversations. People were in trouble if you were even found that it was even discovered that you had heard people speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations. They hurt you and everyone around you. And look, that was before our founders were born and we have houses built. It's still that pathology. It's still that quality aspects in nature designed to use everyone remotely from abroad. People bring up nuclear weapons, but they leave out how the breaching method has all these countries with all these people stacked on buildings, let alone the suburbs were designed tactically to nature to make everyone need mass farming. And the farmers too, multi-front hurt. In other words, other stuff would have been revealed. You guys follow mandated law. And don't pretend it's personal about the O'Neill. They brought it up. I don't know if they're related to them, the guy with the O'Neill, but Central Connecticut State University has a bunch of people with the military involved with Mr. Abruzzi. Also, some kids tied to him, recorded capacity demonstrate confirm him involved with some criminal enterprises and sexual and medical offenders of kids. I never had a conversation with him at all. He told me to do a maze of a Joe DeMoro. He's increasingly involved with this former mayor, people associated with this former mayor Gold, with various natures of organized crimes and federal evidences crimes and wire crimes. In other words, they should not have hid too what I recorded the police doing with them. Now these are also people with a whole bunch of other countries. They say that they have a people tied to they also forced a girl they said they shared, who they also demonstrated they said was involved with in other words, they have people in the military that made them involved with sexual roles with girls. I ain't even, in other words, they take a picture when you go by, like make it look like you're part of the group with them on Route 3. I don't even know those people tied to. In other words, they were planting evidences with a Heather Hansen, a Mike Kerr, and a Joe DeMoro, and they're educators. They're trying to make a fake exception of me knowing a Joe DeMoro or a Heather Hansen. I never saw Heather Hansen on the campus. She was increasingly forced to collusions with the former mayor Gold near me. And people from other campuses from other parts of town. I create people I never saw around campuses. They try to make fake exception too. No, and so look with that's exception. In other words, it's the same thing. And people I don't know at all, like a Joshua Julian. I never saw him around. I never partied with him like he said I partied with him. They're trying to make it look like I was drinking at a Grange in Old Weathersfield years ago. And with a Daryl Chandler, also has roles intercities, people from Newington, people from Weathersfield, old Weathersfield, and his educators. My recording capacity, he wasn't even in my class. A whole bunch of people recorded capacity demonstrate confirmed him involved with criminally foreign influence uses of databases. He said he has people from Korea involved with him. And his roles with a notepad. And a whole bunch of some guy with a pilots too. They have different natures of pilots and roles with Korea. Nothing against Korea. In other words, you guys are psychiatry, you guys are sick. And you have that with the law. You guys are going to speak about law. You can't even get black people's whites of eyes correct. You have predicate acts with facts, evidences, racketeering natures, and you're going to speak about crimes. You got to fix the fake news in databases and get them on one from the name switch, get forging onto paper. 2, watch what they did. They forced me in there 2 times. They made rape threats when I tried to report it. They punched me for trying to report it. Totally made up things to force me to the Harvard Hospital 2 times because I had to hide what I caught them doing. After the first time, I forced them to have people call the police without telling them why, because I already knew they were fakes and they could not be trusted, and they would have to catch. I would be able to catch them that way, and I did. They faked whole conversations and ties to me with a Kevin Dillon, Whole bunch of people tied to Kevin Dillon, Annie Dillon, and then she switches it to Annie with the different roles, with different real estate companies too, and locations associated with her and with that. Increasingly with the Dillon family, with foreign and domestic military, and people involved with untimely deaths, and more rape threats from the Britain Superior Court and other little punks with that court, with the prosecutors and judges involved with criminal enterprises and sexual medical offenders of kids. And they have the audacity to be speaking about courts at these crimes at these courts. In other words, get them on paper, win them the secrets. I asked Judge Napolitano many times, and they brought this up. Don't let them play. They want privacy. Of course, they want privacy. Get off the fake conversation. If they want privacy, get off the fake conversations. True. They have a guy who told me he was going to tie me down and stab me with a needle if I didn't sign a paper. I don't even know why I took it, but then they say you get hurt if you don't keep taking it was some little pill. And I didn't even do drugs. I don't have to do, it was importantly for opiates. I had no opiates. These people, this Leahy family, a whole bunch of people at Harper Hospital involved with people that have been planting evidence on my street since I was a kid. In the fake conversations, they pretend with me. They pretend that I said people were chasing me. You have sick fake agencies jumping into people's conversations dishonestly online. They have the nerve, the FBI, to put an advertisement for people to come work for them. I just saw it on a video. They have 9/11 in the background. You guys still have collusions with it. You have collusions with this former director of FBI, Robert Luskin, and right through the administrations, you hid this stuff from the presidents. You have the whole careers. You kept criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw at the Connecticut courts. Let me educate you. Follow mandated law. I'll show you how what nature shows us how to speak for the law. Understand it. Until you guys owe me money, you hurt my teeth. It made my whole mouth dry out. It hurt my teeth. They have some pill, Vilify, involved with them, and they have all different kinds of pills and things. They were talking about. Everything was undercover. That's why I didn't respond, because I already knew that. But I was there for 3 days. I didn't speak with anyone. I saw the guy too, the Leahy, Brendan Leahy, put his pad down. I didn't respond to him. I didn't have this conversation with him in my life. Same thing like this Mendez police officer, the older one, reportedly the brother of Eric Mendez, who I also never had a class with. Tried to make a fake exception when I was in 8th grade. Only time I ever saw him inside of a campus, real quick, and it was tied to people with the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly, people with the state judicial branch offices has a Czech Casper, a Casper family, his family too. And in other words, I never saw him around campus. He's increasingly involved with a Demi Gold and people from Russia and Ukraine involved with them and with the planting evidences with the Facebook too. See, they have the extreme ever since the World Trade Center attack. Everyone using extremism and radical. I can't get them on paper. I can't get a response. They have people involved with violence too. In other words, more people involved with rape threats, not just in the court online, but tied to those people as their roles that when they were forcing the principal child abuser then. A whole bunch of people with the Facebook page of that principal child abuser campus has a bunch of campuses involved with the police chiefs in the tribe and ones years before him, involved with medical sexual offenders of kids with the same house/S, involved with the police confessions too, regarding the name Scalora too, because that house also made confessions about a Scalora family involved there, and they're involved with this Fred Guzet and people from, the foreign and domestic, campuses from other campuses with the same house/S, involved with wire crimes in them, falsified police reports, interbranch switching names, forging names, while they're putting fake transcripts in databases, while the news does the same thing at the same time. Prepare your mind. A Mark Violet, others, all along Elm Street in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield. They have the spots too, with the Elm Streets and Route 3 and Wethersfield and Rocky Hill. In conjunction to that, like the state judicial branch offices, is and has been increasingly collusion/S with a bunch of people since I was a kid. And as people increasingly collusion/S, people be building upon that. You need to get them on paper, one name and sequence, because there are more people too, other than the two on that street. In other words, I said it before too, on Valleycrest Street, at conjunctions to it and to that, like in Meadowgate with this Kerr family. There's an officer Jerry Miller, and these other officers are involved with this Kerr family, with Marines too, with the people named DeMorrow. One of the DeMorrows looks just like an Aramonte. Like if he had a kid, you look like it might be an Aramonte. And that Joe DeMorrow brought up a Napolitano. I never had a word of conversation with Joe DeMorrow in front of her. I didn't tell her that. And I never had a word of conversation with the Napolitano's friend there. I don't even know her name. A Ray Collo and a Joe DeMorrow have roles with the intelligence community, with all sides of a Connecticut, with the Weathersfield Community Center and people at the community center who have roles with this Dillon family, also with other natures of sexual medical offenders of kids, with people at Hartford Hospital, involved with other natures of organized crimes with them, and roles with untimely deaths, intercities, confessions that are connected, murders tied to it. At the same time, brought up even things confirmed like that tied to that on the Facebook. Then they took the Facebook page. Someone confirmed roles with their family with the body dumping spot. One of the body dumping spots. They took the Facebook page. Someone confirmed on Facebook. They brought up the principal child abusers campus to me in their roles with untimely death. And then planting evidence on my street, fake ties to me. I didn't even respond. Never had a word of conversation with a Robert Rodriguez in my life, except for on Facebook. He confirmed it. Then they took my Facebook page. The Facebook page of the Weathersfield Police. They have a Joshua Schumack, also involved with people from my area. I never saw in my area in my life. He's involved with a Mark Violet and others all along Route 175 with a Joshua, a bunch of people at Trinity College with a Joshua Stryker too, and Eric Oliveri. A bunch of people from Trinity College had them involved with people with corners of streets along, like the corner of Fair Lane Drive and Griswold Street, has something to do with their roles with the FBI and with the Weathersfield Police and in the foreign and domestic. In other words, I don't want to make a map, and I'm trying to show you guys. This is what you guys brought up. And you guys are the ones that are lying when you say you want privacy. Why would you bring it up then? Get me off the fake conversations with the news and with their sources and with the interbranch and get them on paper, one name and sequence. I want a response for the rest of the people involved. How come they didn't? You don't even know what I caught. I caught them doing worse than obscure pictures. They were forcing with that principal obscure nature reportedly in the jail. That was collusion forcing him too. And with other prisoners in their jail. They have collusions with them interstates and internationally with them before they were caught, including people next to the serial killers, the reported serial killer's body on the spot, and that person. And there's a blue van involved, just like that blue van reportedly associated with that guy. Eric Burgess and others with the military with Harper Courts in the Britain Superior Court forced him. Also, I found out FBI Director Robert Lusk involved with them, forcing Odin Judd and his kid to collusions with them, planting evidence of sequence shifts, like with their cell phone too, trying to cover up what came first and what they confessed for. They requested help, and they hid the help. They hid that. Those are people involved with the World Trade Center. That was before the World Trade Center attack. Central Connecticut State University has a bunch of people tied to a Luigi Guerrero. I never had a word of conversation with him. They try to make it look like other. Also, they have collusions with a Paul Zano with that. Make it look like I'm being next to me and make it look like I know him or ever communicated with him. I only know him planting evidences and with Jew syntax too. Basically, the only thing I heard, like 90% of the words I ever heard him speak was the word Jew to my neighbor Ray. And they have roles planting evidences with Jew-themed intelligence. And the counselors to them as collusions. These some black KKK, Mark Violet, Justin Kavitskas have some KKK confessions, and in black with their roles out next to Trinity College with my neighbors, and people with a Tom Perone, and I don't know if his daughter's married, a Danielle Perone. They were planting evidences with them, fake ties to me, fake motivations for it. In other words, they tricked me to be in there, and then they planting evidences. It has something to do with the people across the street from them too. I never had a conversation with them. Increasing the inclusions with that Perone family and educators that were putting big things in databases and then lying to those people about it. In other words, and this is what they're bringing up. They have the side entry. In other words, you get them on paper, one name and sequence. Where's the O'Neill family live? In West Hartford campuses. You have an O'Neill family that has their kids involved with organized crimes in Weathersfield campuses. And their tactically delusions wrong. They have this lady family involved with their little kids too, with sexual medical offenders of kids, criminally foreign impulse uses of corners of buildings too. Watch. I ain't that in other words. I know you guys did something like that too. In other words, you're doing it between the campuses too. You have more people involved with 3 campuses now. And you guys, these are the same ones with the colleges and universities involved with predicate acts, with facts, organized crimes, and the people next to it too. In other words, this is before and after the World Trade Center attack, and this goes way back. In other words, people.